My name's Nat, and welcome to Thursday's webinars. Every Thursday, we go into a deep dive into a different subject related to neurodiversity. Today, we're looking at celebrities, successful, notable people with dyscalculia and dysgraphia. Why? Because no one talks about it. But I should give you a bit of a disclaimer today. This session was really difficult to write. Why? There is no information about the internet. If you search celebrities, you'll see loads. They're mostly fake. I'm going to do my best to give you where I got the evidence from, and to note that a lot of these are suspected or proposed or done. In terms of an official diagnosis, we're operating on fumes here because it's a relatively new diagnosis, but more so, it's that the amount of people who are qualified to diagnose it is itty bitty. These people get dyslexia or dyspraxia. However, if we're looking at it from the perspective of, did this individual significantly struggle with either a form of writing or with mathematics, and they have overcame that in order to be successful? That is what we're going to be focusing on today, just so we're all in the clear. We normally talk about dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, ADHD. The only reason is they're the most prevalent. They're the conditions which most people are aware about. However, if you are someone who has dysgraphia or dyscalculia, and I will be talking more about what they are soon, you want to see yourself represented in the media. Personally, I am diagnosed with dyslexia, dyspraxia, and autism, but I have all the characteristics of dyscalculia and dysgraphia. My handwriting is illegible. It is terrible. But yet my intelligence, not too bad. There's a bit of a disconnect here. Also, when it comes to my math abilities, I cannot do mathematical stuff in my head. I have to write it out. I really struggle. All of us would say, oh, it's a bit difficult. But if it's something which is a continuous barrier, I would say if I were to be diagnosed, I would get it. But there's no point in getting a diagnosis, because the support you get for dyslexia, dyspraxia, whatever, you'd get the same level of support. And I believe that's one of the main reasons people do not seek additional diagnosis. These aren't Pokemon cards where you've got to collect them all. It's all about getting the support you need. There's my 2 cents on the matter. Here's me. Wow, look at me. That's it, really. It's just to let you know that I know stuff, and hopefully collectively we can work together. Here's our team. You got myself today, you've got April today, and you got Jess today. The last webinar that we recorded and we have online is OCD and pop culture. Isn't media awful? I love watching TV, but let's face it, it hasn't been overly kind to us. And we look at how we have reported obsessive compulsive disorder in the media. Always uploaded on our lovely YouTube channel. 6,000 subscribers now. Slowly but steady, we're getting there. Exceptional at and dysgraphia. I say exceptional because there are some people who have gone above and beyond. Let's be real. Celebrities, they don't mean they're amazing or exceptional. It just means they get a bit more public exposure. There are probably thousands of examples of individuals who have these neurodevelopmental conditions, which are doing amazing. However, like I said, quite difficult to research because there just isn't that much out there. We are focusing on more of your headliners today, but not because there aren't other exceptional people. These are just the people that we know of. How do I know if my 8-year-old son has dyscalculia? He was diagnosed with mild ADHD and autism. I would say there's no such thing as mild ADHD and autism, because mild makes us sound like we're in Nando's and we're like, I'll have the mild one, the extra spicy. That's just, again, a slight little grip I have. In terms of how do you know, we will talk a bit about that. But if someone has a consistent difficulty with grasping mathematical formulas or math concepts, however, the rest of their intelligence or processing isn't affected if it's for a prolonged period of time. Dyscalculia doesn't mean you're bad at maths. When you're young, let's say at 8, you probably are not going to be good at maths because you're still learning. Because you're learning, if you don't know something, that doesn't mean you have a condition. It just means you're learning. But if you are behind your peers, or if there are things which you know, but you're still making the same mistakes time and time again, that's normally a good indication of something like dyscalculia or dysgraphia. Thanks for that question. Let's do a quick definition just so we're all on the same page here. What is dyscalculia? Honestly, all these disses, they're a right mouthful. Dys just means different from the ordinary. Calculia, think of it like calculator, calculations. Difficulty with mathematics. I do say it's not just being bad at maths, because it's not. For instance, they thought Einstein potentially could have had dyscalculia because the way he solves maths was different to how the mainstream solve maths. A bit of a cheesy example, but 1 + 1 = 2. You know that? I know that. But 1 + 1 could also equal 11 because 1 and 1 = 11. But we know it doesn't equal 11. Why do we know that? Because we have created systems in place which helps us solve math equations. If your brain struggles to comprehend those equations, you're going to get a different answer. But it's only wrong because those aren't the agreed rules that we have all collectively chose to go along with. And this is why you can have a maths difficulty and still be good at maths, but it might take you a little bit longer to convert and manipulate numbers to make them work with you rather than against you. The definition of dyscalculia is impairments in maths and understanding and performance. It can affect you in multiple ways. We've got a nice little triad here. It could be number sense, being able to visualize numbers. Can you close your eyes and picture a number line? Do you get your 6s and 5s mixed up? Are you tripping over numbers? Do you struggle where every time you go from like a 1-digit to a 2-digit? That could be it. What about math operations? Are you the type of person who always gets your plus and your minuses mixed up, your times and your multiplies? I will often read something as plus, but actually minus. No, a plus is actually times. You can see how it's similar to dyslexia, where the brain reads what it wants to read, even if it's not what it's meant to be saying. Or there's problems, things like algebra. Things which are very difficult to visualize. If you're a visual learner, algebra sucks because it's not tangible. You can't hold algebra. How does algebra apply to real life situations? You could argue it doesn't, or at least not in a straightforward way. With most of these things, we are more visual learners, and maths is not the best for being a visual learner. A lot of visual learners are inherently creative. They are great at coming up with ideas, but maths is very binary on the whole. 1, 2, 3, it has a pattern. You can't go 1, 4, 9, 7 because that's no longer in order. It doesn't allow you to have too much creative license. The prevalence, which is how many of us are out there, we're looking at about 3 to 6% of the population. That's a lot. I can't work it out in my hands, but makes sense. But if we were to work out how many people in the world has dyscalculia, we're talking millions here. Then symptoms, difficulties with I'll pronounce that word, number sense, reasoning, and memory. Let's have a little look at dysgraphia now. Remember dys as in different from the ordinary or difficulty, and graphia, think of it like a graphite pencil or a graph. So writing. The definition is it affects writing, including spelling and handwriting. You might think, doesn't this sound a lot like dyslexia? And they like mixing these two together. Too many labels, let's just call them the same thing. But dyslexia is mostly around reading and phonologic, how you break words apart. Dysgraphia is writing. You could argue that every doctor on the planet has dysgraphia because the handwriting's terrible. But if you are someone who's really smart and the handwriting doesn't add up, if you don't want to know why that is, because writing's an interesting one. You could be amazing at drawing, but you'd think handwriting is very similar to drawing. No, it's a different part of the brain which is taking the priorities. We often talk about the brain having a left and right. That's a myth, but it is true that different hemispheres of the brain or different lobes have more of a priority where the majority of the processing is done. Writing and drawing are actually very different, even though you might not think that. About 5 to 20% of students have dysgraphia. I put students rather than general populations because, again, the data is rather sparse. That's a large amount, but it's a spectrum. Some people might be like, I can't even touch that. I'm not even looking at it. I once supported a person who genuinely, for the life of them, couldn't or would always get 5 and 6 mixed up. Sounds a bit funny, but you put it in real life, a big issue when you're getting paid, paying other people, doing phone numbers, illegible writing, inconsistent writing. So maybe you're writing every now and then you put a random capital, your punctuations, you're in trouble organizing. It doesn't mean you're bad at writing in terms of the story or the narrative, but in terms of the structure that, again, society has established, you might be considered inconsistent. Now that we are up together on what they are, we can probably look at some famous examples of people who don't just have it, but have overcome it and made the most out of it. Which of these celebrities did you know had dysgraphia. Remember, dysgraphia is predominantly the writing one. Are we looking at Branson, Cher, Tom Cruise, Spielberg, Orlando Bloom, or Henry? I know I've said it before, but before you start telling all your friends, you'll never guess who has dysgraphia. It should be noticed that the vast majority aren't officially diagnosed. But when you look at their biographies or personal, this is where you can see that they have a lot of the characteristics that are associated. For example, Branson and Cher, as far as I'm aware, are officially diagnosed. And you might think that, doesn't Branson have dyslexia? Yeah, he does as well. And it's because these things are co-occurring, they combined. It's very common to have one and have the other. It doesn't contradict. Orlando Bloom, I believe, is just suspected. Henry Winkler, La Fonz, is diagnosed. Tom Cruise, I believe, is diagnosed. Definitely dyslexia, I think dysgraphia, he is also publicly spoken about. Most of you have heard of it. Let's look at one case example. Let's look at good old Harry Potter himself, Daniel Radcliffe. On this screen, I want you to rank how difficult you find the following. Do you find it difficult using scissors, doing your buttons, zipping your ties, tying a water balloon? Because these are potentially some of the things that Daniel Radcliffe might struggle with as someone who has dysgraphia and dyspraxia. Dysgraphia and dyspraxia aren't actually that dissimilar. Dyspraxia is about motor coordination, your fine motor skills and gross motor skills. Dysgraphia is more like writing. It's more practical, where dyspraxia is a bit broader. However, you can see why they would go hand in hand with each other. There's not really a clear cutoff point. Struggle tying up a balloon, button zippers. If you wonder, why is that? If you think about it, what do they all have in common? They require two hands. And this is requiring two different parts of the brain to work together at the exact same time. That is not great if you have a processing disorder or processing delay. We know that the left hand is controlled by the right brain and the right brain controls the left hand. Funny how that works. When we're using both hands together, there's actually quite a lot of processing. It makes sense why some people would struggle. What about how comfortable is writing for you or drawing? Are you the type of person that can write, likes writing, it causes you pain? Or maybe pain's a bit of a strong word, but severe discomfort. For me, that is the case. I have to have special pens that have special grips for me. It's similar to carpal tunnel syndrome or arthritis, but the reason why it hurts is very different. It's the different pressure points. A lot of people will actually avoid writing because it is painful. Obviously, we don't do as much writing as we used to these days. And I do think that's a shame, because with all these things, while it may not be your strength, practice does make perfect, and it can at least help you improve. But it might mean that you may never be the best physical writer. When we say, oh, I like writing, we normally assume it's all about the mental side of writing and thinking about it. But we're actually talking about the actual act of writing. Laura didn't know that. Glad you could know. In terms of how prevalent, as we said, dyscalculia and dysgraphia are very common, but very under talked about. Kiana says, my father was held back a grade in the States where he was young. I think he had dysgraphia and dyslexia. He was told he was slow, but his maths and mental maths were perfect. That's a prime example. I had 25% extra time in my exams and I got quite good grades in the end. But when I was held to the same standards as other people with a limited time frame, my grading was particularly impacted. It does show you how our brains might take a bit longer to process because things aren't in order, which are more conducive to our learning, but that doesn't mean that we lack the capacity in order to succeed in that given time. Here's a question for all of you. Which business magnate, which apparently means boss and Virgin Group founder, has dysgraphia and used unconventional thinking to build a business empire? I think this one's fairly easy. I'm curious, do you all know? Have you noticed how they laugh? They all look a little bit evil. Regardless of the evilness, they're all very successful. Yes, it is Richard Branson. Richard Branson is very public about his dyslexia, but he also talks about dysgraphia and he also contributes it to his success. Jeff Bezos, I don't know if he has anything. Bill Gates is suspected to have calculia, though not confirmed, and also highly suspected to have autism, though not confirmed. Elon Musk has publicly said he has Asperger's, which was a previous form of autism. Let's have a little look at Branson. He's founded Virgin Group, which is massive. He has founded and acquired over 400, I think it might even be 100 now, but let's be conservative, 400 companies. ridiculously successful. He has built them not despite his neurological differences, but he contributes them to them, which I think is really empowering. He's a massive advocate, offsets his deficits with people who are better in those areas. And he puts all his energy into being the innovator, the idea creator, someone who nurtures an idea. When it gets to fruition, he lets it flies off into the sunset. I admire that. A quote from Branson is, "You don't learn to walk by following the rule. You learn by doing and falling over." That is a good point, actually, because there are many people, if you read a book, you're a baby, but you're very good at reading. You're reading, you're like, all right, this is how you walk. Unless you practice it, you're never going to learn. Richard Branson has been a very physical, very practical, very hands-on innovator, and he contributes a lot of that to his success. You'll find that a lot of people who struggle with reading or writing, rather than give up, they will find alternative ways around a problem and then become really good with those alternative skill sets. Those alternative skill sets become very valuable in the workplace, and then they end up becoming extremely successful. On the other hand, though, you might really struggle and feel really bad about yourself, and then do not meet your potential and become an underachiever. In terms of a seesaw, it can go either way. And this is why inspiring people is so important. Here's a question. What famous mystery writer known for on the Orient Express had dysgraphia and often dictated her novels? Yeah, of course it is. It's the one. It is the only Agatha Christie. I'm always using her as an example. It really, again, should be noted, this thing when she was alive. So she wasn't diagnosed. However, she actually wrote a lot about her life, and she often spoke about her writing, and her writing, while it was illegible sometimes, it was inconsistent. Some days it'd be unreadable. Other days it would be. Sometimes she'd use commas. Other times she wouldn't. Her handwriting would be swirly. Other times it would be flat. She is still today one of the most successful writers of all time. Forget about Shakespeare. Her novels are actually readable and really enjoyable. You want to know, how does she do it? It has these difficulties. Was it just continuously fighting against the grain to get successful? Or did her difficulties actually aid to her success? Let's find out. I want to actually do a quick example, just for a bit of fun. This is, use a random assortment of letters, lines, or spaces to write your name. I want you to write your name with using the letters that you should be using. An example could be a number plate. Or for instance, for Nat, I might say N and then a little @ symbol and little cross. Let's see if you can think of any examples. I think I put an example here. That's how I would write Nat using different characters. Yeah, April, brilliant. This shows you that just because you are not following the conventions dictated by our local society doesn't mean that you aren't able to still complete a task. April, for example, spelt her name with a 1 or an R. I can still read that. I know April knows her name. But also, it shows you an element of creativity. Because I gave you a limitation, you had to think of an alternative answer. Jess, again, has used 5 S's. That just shows a level of creativity. I'm not saying Agatha Christie wrote like that. It gives you an idea. Oh, nice, Vicky. I like that. That's very creative. As they say, there are many ways to skin a cat. Actually, I don't believe in skinning cats. But the idea that you can do things in multiple ways is a way that has always resonated very heavily with me. Let's have a little bit at Christie's background. She's a renowned author for her detective novels. She is a good detective. She has faced significant difficulties, and there's the word significant. We all face difficulties, but if it's significant, that's when it might be a condition, with spelling and handwriting. Despite that, she has achieved 66 detective novels. Get a new genre, love. She loved those detectives, but they are good. 14 short essays and the world's longest running play, The Mousetrap. What a classic. Not too shabby. I hear what you say. That's great, Nat. How'd she do it? That's what I want to know. We'll get to that. Here's another thing, just to get a feel of you. Which do you commonly miss out when you're writing? Do you often miss out individual letters? Do you often miss out whole words? Do you often miss capital letters when you're meant to use them? Or do you always forget the punctuation? These are very common things that Agatha was always missing out. Thankfully, though, she had a stellar team that would do it. There are some people that have a great attention to detail. They are what we call bottom-up. There are other people, like Agatha, who was a top-down processor. They'd see the big picture and then they'd get down smaller. They never actually got that small, but thankfully there are other people who were much better at that. The great people of history weren't great on their own. The vast majority of them had amazing people to complement their skill set. If any of you have actually read her books or watched the TV or film series, who do you think is your best detective out of the lot? Is it Pyro? Is it Miss Marple? Or is it Tommy and Tuppence? I'll be honest with you, I had no idea who they were until I started researching this. But she could write loads of detective novels after all, so there's going to be a few that you hadn't heard of. Laura says, I miss letters because my mind goes so quickly, but then I pick it up in editing. I can't imagine how difficult it is if you don't notice those things. That is a real difficulty with conditions like dyslexia because your mind isn't slow. Sometimes it works too quick and it thinks, you know what, I don't care about the details. I just want the overall message. That can be an advantage, but if you are being marked or critiqued for the individual points, that's going to be difficult. If you look at old language all around the world, our language was very inconsistent. When I was doing my family tree, trying to sort everyone's names out, because everyone spelled their names different from one day to the next, it was common practice to not give a hoot about the spelling. But it's only in recent time where we've become a little bit more anal around it. All right, Pyro, you're nice. To be fair, with a mustache like that, he deserves to win. I've got to the slide I had envisioned. Despite her dysgraphia, Christie became a prolific author. Through her different testimonies and writings, these are some of the ways that she did it. I want you to rank what you would personally find most useful when writing. How did Christie do it? She used her imagination. She was very imaginative and would always find solutions to her problem. That gave an outcome which probably hadn't been thought of before. She spoke about her stories. She dictated. A lot of the time she would say it out loud as someone would be typing behind her, or she'd have lots of assistants and teams. You don't do 77 novels without a cracking team behind you. I reckon if she was alive today, she would very much be using Dragon or voice dictation software. She had a team. I really can't hit home enough that we think that people must be some super genius. No, they're just a brand name. They have people helping them. Even people like Shakespeare, a lot of historians believe he didn't write a lot of his things. He was the brand. Think of people like Thomas Edison. Did he invent the light bulb? I'm not so certain. He was a really great thief and he stole everyone's ideas and paper. However, I don't think that necessarily diminishes his talents or abilities. He had a problem and he found ways around it. Very obviously, she shouldn't steal. She found new ways to write. So if her hand hurt, she would swap hands, or I don't know if that's true or not, but she would often find different ways to complement her style, and she revised her work. Her work was revised again. She wasn't necessarily a quick writer, but she was a good writer, and she had people who would proof check her work, then she would read it and she would amend it. Writing isn't a fluid process. It's more like a jigsaw puzzle where, yes, you've got to create the jigsaw pieces, but then it's up to you to find what they fit best. But it just shows that adaptation to suit your learning needs works wonders. More places should allow this / be more accepting. I am a really big advocate of creative spelling. When you go to team meetings or in school and they ask you, do you write on the board? If I write on the board, I'm going to look like an idiot because I can't spell anything. But if you say, hey, no stigma, no shame, just get those ideas on the board and we'll work it out later, is where you get to hear everyone's voices and opinions. And you will definitely get a couple of gems from it. Christie says, the impossible could not have happened. Therefore, the impossible must be possible in spite of the appearance. That doesn't make much sense at first, but let's break it down because I actually quite like the quote. The impossible could not have happened. What we're saying here, if it's impossible, can't happen. Therefore, the impossible must be impossible in spite of its appearance. Because it is a thing, it has to be possible. If we're saying it's impossible, I don't know, I'm going to get it tongue-tied, but what she is saying here is anything is doable. The word impossible doesn't exist. Do we have any people who are a little bit older in the audience? Does anyone remember Mary Tyler Moore? I'm not expecting you younglings to know, but an absolute hero on the TV screen. Yeah, she's been an icon of TV for years and years. April's heard of her in the Weezer Buddy Holly song. Just like Buddy Holly. Yeah, it's a great song. She had her own show. She's been in many different shows. And she struggled with maths through her whole life. Despite her struggle, she's became a successful actress and producer, winning multiple awards and accolades. Good on you, Mary. Mary quoted, take chances, make mistakes. That's how you grow. Very much like Richard Branson, to be fair. Pain nourishes your courage. That's a very deep quote here. Struggle and build a set of resilience and grit, which you would get otherwise. You have to fail in order to practice being brave. I could imagine reading the characters or doing the maths or just trying to set herself as a credible woman in the era she was most famous for must have been a real struggle. Yet she didn't let that hold her back. I think your perseverance and attitude is one of your biggest strengths, particularly in a world which doesn't conform to the way that your brain naturally processes the world. There's documentaries on a lot about her. Oh, she died in 2017. Well, I need to know more about her, to be honest. I've seen her TV shows. From what I can tell, great inspiration, particularly in the era that she lived in. For a big money bags, Charles Schwab, he is ridiculously wealthy. And just like Warren Buffett, who also has dyslexia, actually, a lot of investors have dyslexia, which is quite interesting. Charles also has dyslexia. This again doesn't make sense. How can you be amazing with money and still have dyscalculia? It just means you have to look at the world in a slightly different angle. And that different angle could give you the advantage you need to set yourself above the rest. He has built one of the biggest brokerage firms in the world, still going strong, even though he has lots of challenges. He is someone who is very positive and very strength focused. Forget about the difficulties. Let's focus on what I can do. One of the key things for people like Charles and similar individuals, delegation. Delegation is where you say, hey, I know someone else who is better than me. I'm going to get them to do that. I'm going to focus on the ideas or the things I'm strength-based at. I'll be honest, that's great advice, but that's easier said than done when you're starting from the bottom, working your way up to the top, because you have no one to delegate to. I would say with a lot of these developmental differences, they are easier the more senior you become, not because it goes away, but because your responsibilities and what you're expected to do personally change. Here's another question to get you thinking. Which actress and singer known as the goddess of pop has spoken about struggles with both dysgraphia and dyscalculia? We've got a double bill. Again, that's quite common. Who is she? Are we looking at Madonna, strike a pose, Lady Gaga, poker face, Cher, I believe in life after love, or Tina Turner? That's what I've got to do. I recently saw Tina Turner the musical or her theatre thing in the West End. Really good, actually. I went because I got a free ticket, but very much enjoyed it. It is Cher. Cher, for many years, I thought was part of ABBA. She's not, but Cher is a very distinguished artist in her own right. However, did appear in Mamma Mia. That's maybe where I got my wires mixed up. I think Cher's fantastic, and I've been listening to loads of Cher this morning. I forgot how many bangers she had. She has a very distinctive, low-pitched voice. What's her surname? Who are you, Cher? I could have Googled it, but I like the mystery of not knowing. Is a famous singer and actress known for hits like Believe, but she has done many more, and has very publicly spoken about dyslexia and dyscalculia. She really struggles with maths, with timekeeping, with dates, with finances, with a whole heap of them. Unlike a lot of the others, she's a big advocate in terms of gaining awareness. Hats off to you, Cher. She has won Academy Awards, Grammy, Emmys, you name it, a couple of Golden Globes. Who's counting? One of her difficulties is when it comes to managing time and reading time. I want you all to look at this clock and tell me what is the time. Obviously, this is meant to be difficult. It's meant to trip you up. But I'm someone who also really struggles with time telling. It's because of the format. When you're going from PM, AM to 24-hour, I really struggle with 24-hour clocks. My brain can read it, but I have to do conversion. You'll probably know where the hands are out, like muscle memory. Imagine that every time you want to read the time, your brain is having to solve equations in your head. That's what it feels like. You can do it, but if someone's expecting to be quick and snappy, it's going to take time. I do have a watch on me, but people don't really ask me for the time as much now because of the phones and whatnot. But when I was younger, not everyone had phones, and people would always ask me for the time. I got so anxious because they want me to read the time really quickly. I wasn't able to read it instantaneously. I'd be like, you read it? And they say, no, you tell me. My eyes aren't so good. And I'd be like, oh God. I stopped wearing a watch for many years. Obviously now, no one asks me. I think he said, it took me a long time to learn to tell the time, then even longer to learn that 20 is 8. I really struggle with that. I was very old by the time when I finally learned to tell the time. If you say something like 10 to or quarter past, it really throws me. Cher says, I am a terrible reader. I don't write letters. Numbers and I have absolutely no relationship. I like to say she based a lot of her songs on romance about numbers, but yeah, really isn't for her. What are some of your favorite songs by Cher? She might not be great at paying the bill when you finished your meal at Nando's, but she is really great at songs. Was it Believe? For If I Could Turn Back Time, or Gypsies, Tramp and Thieves? I can't sing that one. The Snoop song, I Got You Babe, and Strong Enough. Let's face it, it's either Believe or If I Could Turn Back Time. Those are the ones that initially come to your mind. If I Could Turn Back Time was one of her early hits, and then Believe is when she just smashed it. These are great songs. Cher's great, but how does she do it? We went through a load of articles, loads of things of Cher talking, and here is how she overcame Dyscalculia. I want you to know, what do you think helped her most? Which of these had the biggest impact on Cher? Was it using auditory methods to learn and manage time? Rather than trying to read it, she would speak it back to herself or just have the time repeated. I often get my little home device to tell me the time. Does she rely on assistants for scheduling and finances? She does. You might think that's a luxury to have an assistant. It is a luxury, but I said if you get to that stage where you can have one, streamlines your life. She doesn't do her own finances. She has accountants for that. I appreciate that's a luxury. However, I know it would definitely support me. Embracing her unique thinking towards weakness into strengths, rather than getting all down about it and thinking, I suck. She was like, you know what? There's things I'm much better at. That's allowed her to stay focused and motivated. Raising awareness about this. I actually think this is quite a big one. If you're someone who is always struggling with something and you're able to inspire people to say, you know what? This doesn't have to be the thing that defines you in terms of that sets you back. It could be something that really gives you an advantage or something you can use to your strength. That's really motivating. And I find sometimes I get pretty down because I still struggle with day-to-day life all the time. And knowing that when I help people, I don't know if I'm helping you today, but maybe if I help you even just a tiny bit, it makes the struggles worthwhile. I do think advocating can be really beneficial. April says, I think the first Cher I remember hearing, these Tramps and Thieves. I remember when Believe was number one. That song was big when it first came out. Let's have a little look at Tom Cruise, who has dyslexia and dysgraphia, known for Top Gun, Mission Impossible, and also known for being one of the most dedicated and hard-working people in the industry. He's got an incredible mindset. While diagnosed with these conditions, he is one of the highest-grossing box office stars of all time. I think he was, and then Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson came and took his spot. But anyway, Tom Cruise, very successful. Tom struggles with even writing and holding a pen. I'm curious, how do you write? Do you have amazing penmanship? Like, are you someone who holds a pen like you're going to stab it? Or are you someone who can't even hold a pen and just fidgets around? We all have different ways of write. I took really long to hold a pen, and that's why I had to have special pens. Tom struggled with that. I don't know why he's in that pose. It's a little bit provocative. Relax, Tommy boy. Tom, as we said, very successful. What is your favorite Cruise film? Is it Top Gun, Mission Impossible, Jerry Mandate, Rayman? Jerry Mandate I think is quite interesting because it's a lot about that. Minority Report, A Few Good Men. Doesn't really matter which one your favorite. They're all really great. Rayman is obviously a classic one for depicting autism. Whether or not it's successful, we'll leave that up to your discretion, but still a banging film nevertheless. How did Tom do it? Which skill or support would help you most? These are all things that have helped Tom overcome his challenges. Would any of these personally help you in being the best version of yourself you possibly can be? What do we have here from him? We've got exceptional memorization. Does it matter that Tom can't write? Not really. He's really good at memory. If you're like me, I have a terrible memory. So this would help me a lot. It's definitely not something I have. We've got strong work ethic and determination. This is what makes Tom Cruise Tom Cruise. His determination and work ethic is second to none. Tutor and coaching, let's face it, he didn't do it on his own. He would have had a team behind him, helping him every step of the way. Mindset. Do you focus on your strengths or do you focus on your challenges? Tom is definitely a beacon of hope when it comes to mind over matter. A quote from Tommy Cruise is, I had to train myself to focus, saying it didn't come naturally to him. He had to work for it. I became very visual and learned how to create mental images in order to comprehend what I read. That's basically very similar to Temple Grandin, who thinks in pictures. If your brain struggles to remember things in a conventional way, try and change the way you remember. I'm doing a TED Talk soon. I'm terrified I'm going to forget what I'm saying. But if what I'm trying to do is learn my script through like visual imagery and how I'm placed on the stage or different hand movements, whether or not that's successful for me, only time will tell. But I do know that I can't try and do it the way that everyone else is doing it. It just isn't going to work that way. And I think our last example is Whoopi Goldberg, a little bit controversial in some of her opinions these days, but nevertheless, still a great success, who has done things like Sister Act. Whoopi Goldberg, actress, comedian, TV host, you name it. Also one of the few people to have won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony Award. I don't know if she was purposely going after like the holy grail of all of them. Very publicly speaks about dyslexia and dysgraphia. These 4 things, I just want you to rank which ones you think is most important when it comes to setting yourself up for success. Are we looking at early interventions, so getting diagnosed early, support systems, having people around you who are willing and able to support you successfully, personal determination like Tom Cruise, like saying, you know what, nothing's going to stop me, adaptive techniques, being agile, saying, hey, if I hit a roadblock here, I can pivot and go around the corner and find an alternative way around it. Some people hit a roadblock and quit, and that just isn't going to get you very far. Of course, society needs to change. But let's face it, society is slow when it comes to change. It's why we have to be our own drivers. We've got adaptive first, then support, then early diagnosis, and then determination. The final curtain call or summary, dysgraphia, such a tongue tied together, are challenges that many face. This isn't a very niche thing. A lot of people have it, but we're still learning more about it as a society. They do not define you, however, and you can still be the most successful person on the planet, even because of it. With right support and strategies, individuals with these learning differences can achieve exceptional things. In terms of action, let's keep advocating and empowering those with learning disabilities. Because if we empower them, it doesn't have to be a disability, or at least that disability doesn't have to be the thing that holds them back in every other element of their life. It's true to say, if you have a difficulty in one thing, it will have a knock-on impact on every element of your life, but there are definitely ways around it, either by finding alternative solutions or by focusing on the things that you really can do very well. How would you describe the differences between and dyspraxia in terms of writing? Both are physical left deformations and organization planning, etc. I would say one is more closely linked to dyslexia, being dysgraphia. Dyspraxia is more when it comes to motor coordination, more round. Let me get this right. Gross motor skills is the whole body, and motor skills are the fine ones. I always get those two mixed up. One is more motor, one is more gross. One affects a particular task, which is important in day-to-day life. Another one is broader. There is more to it, but these conditions, they all flow and intermix. They're not always a cut-off point. If you went to get diagnosed by one person who was an expert in one and not the other, it's very possible that they could get mixed up. Yes, gross is bigger, fine is smaller. Here's a library if you want to know where we got the information from. Big disclaimer, as I keep saying, just because I really don't want to be posting fake information, not all of these people are confirmed by themselves. Do all take these by a pinch of salt. However, all of the challenges and solutions have been mentioned are from the horse's mouth. Whether or not we're using that exact label, dyscalculia or dysgraphia, these are definitely individuals who do have learning challenges, whatever you name them, and have overcome them. If you do resonate with any of these challenges, and in the UK, apologies for those down under, you can get access to workplace needs assessments in the UK that can give you support. But go on our website to learn more about support you can get in the workplace. And we do private ones internationally, but they do have a charge attached to them. If you can, it's worthwhile. Our next webinar is dyslexia in women. But when I talk about sex here, we are talking about gender. Holly Willoughby has dyslexia, if you're wondering why I have her. We are going to be talking about how dyslexia is in women and why it is different, how it portrays different, how it is seen different, how people might have different reactions. We're looking at a societal perspective, but also in terms of tangible results on how we might go about supporting people. We know how ADHD is very different in men and women. Dyslexia in women isn't as big of a contrast as ADHD. However, there are still differences. Come check that out. If you're interested in learning more, click on our subscribe button and go on our YouTube and watch all our videos. We have loads of them now. Here's how you contact us. Just go to admin if you want to drop us an email, or go to our website if you want to learn more, blah, blah, blah. Hope you had a great day. Enjoy the rest of your Thursdays, but I hope you found it useful, interesting, and I really look forward to seeing you all next week and the coming weeks after that. Thank you so much. See you soon.